About why are you here? Could you begin? Why are you here?
Yeah, the topic is I wanted to know at what stage should a person be here?
Okay.
Because it's not mentioned the age.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yes.
Plus, I am even connected with a few other organizations.
Great.
So I attend these lectures.
Yes.
To these speakers.
Right. Great. What about you?
I come for knowledge purpose.
Okay. To learn how to make sexual decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
What about
Knowledge and
you?
awareness.
Okay. See, basically, these things which we are going to learn today, that we can apply to our own lives as well as to people who are under our care.
What does it mean your sexual decision? Are you talking about the marriages?
No.
No, that's what I was also going
No.
to tell you. At what age should a person visit for this type of a lecture?
No, I'll tell you something. There is no right or wrong age for such a kind of thing. See, even if you have made all your major decisions, all your major sexual decisions, doesn't mean you cannot come and visit me now. You can always help others to make a decision, right? So you are never too late for anything. The right age to probably, go on to learning these skills of sexual decision making would be when you are reaching your adulthood. When you, start having sex. That's the right age. But then even having said that, probably you all did not even have the facility of attending a lecture on these lines, right? So now you can help those people, or even if
Type of education.
yes, or even if at any age, see, it's not that you've begun doing something and you cannot stop doing something and begin afresh. It's never too late to begin something new, right? So even you can learn something for your own requirement, or you can even learn it for somebody who's under your care, right? So basically, let us begin with factors which influence our sexual decision. There are so many things which influence our sexual decision. Now, the first would be emotional influences. We somehow
Here, sir, by sexual decisions, what do you mean?
Okay.
What kind of decisions are sexual decisions?
Okay, very good, very good. See, I'll give you a few examples of a sexual decision. Examples of that would be a boy who has just entered his teenage and he wants to decide whether he should have sex or not. That's a sexual decision. A girl who has got pregnant and wants to decide whether she should carry the baby to term or she should get an abortion, right? Then cases of extramarital relationship, like a man and a woman already married and they are sexually attracted to each other. So should they have a sexual relationship or should they not? So anything related with sex and love are basically comes under sexual decisions. And let me tell you something, sexual decisions are not so easy as we think them to be. It's not like, black and white, you do this or do that. Because so many of the factors are involved, as we shall learn right now, that after you go through this basic presentation, you will realize that that's a reason why so many men and women fail at this task. Right? The first and the foremost factor which influences a sexual decision is an emotional influence. We are all ruled by our emotions. Right? It's sexual decision is not something which you are just using your head and your logic all the time. You are being guided by your emotion. The foremost factor is your emotion, and then you are taking a decision. Right? You are attracted to a woman. So that is an emotion of sexuality or sensuality. So that in itself is guiding you to take a decision of, either kissing her, having sex with her or whatever. So one of the factors is an emotional influence. The second factor is an cultural constraint. We live in a society where there are so many different norms now. Earlier, like, many years ago, probably we had one kind of sexual norms. You can have sex only after getting married and things like that. But now from past 20 years, ever since we are witnessing the sexual revolution, many different sexual value systems have come up. People of your generation probably not believe in premarital sex, or just believe in being faithful to their partners. But if you look at men and women now, there is so much of fluidity in their sexual decisions. There is lots of premarital sex, there is a lot of extramarital sex. There are so many multiple partners they have, right? So even our whole culture is undergoing a lot of change, and we have to keep track of that change. Now you cannot guide people on the basis of how you lived your life. Like when patients come to me, it's like, it's a very different value system for them. They will not come to me asking whether I should have sex or not. Nobody comes and asks me about that. They will tell me how to have sex or what is the best way to have protected sex? They will never ask me ethical questions or questions related with morality. So all that is cliche now. It's absolutely cliche. We are living in an age where people want to experiment with sex, or they want to know more about sex, but morality and ethics is something which they are not concerned at all. They are very clear about what they want. So they are not coming for moral decisions. They are coming for practically either a sexual problem or some kind of a sexual dilemma. Like, the woman is married and he is having sex with her. So how does he go about, carrying on the relationship? Or like he wants to have multiple sex partners but doesn't want to get married. There are so many male patients I have who, like, they are having lots of multiple sex partners and they don't want to get married. They are fine, they are doing well monetarily, but no, that's their lifestyle now. They don't want to have sex with a kind of commitment. They want a commitless sex, so they don't want to get married. Right? So we have to respect their views rather than me telling them don't do this, don't do that. Who's going to, like, save you in the old age? They are not worried about the old age. They are worried about now. My present should be really good. I'm not worried about my future. So they will not even ask me, sir, what should I do? You think, sir, I should really get married? No, they are very clear about the kind of lifestyle they want to lead. And it's not that if I give them a guidance, they are going to follow. Their mind is already made up. They are educated men and women. So you cannot influence them in any other way. Now, adding something more to this cultural constraints, we have, every family has certain cultural values and social values. But what happens is, over a period of time, since there are many other factors which are also working at the same time, we say that, a child belongs to a very cultured family, or, a very valued family. But at one point of time, like when you become a teenager and when you start mixing around with other men and women, your whole value system also undergoes a transition. You are basically only influenced by your parents. Once you move out of the house, once you go to college, once you work, you see so many different value systems around you. So even if you have your own basic value system, sometimes that gets eroded and you adopt a new value system, which is happening to many of the people in cities like Mumbai, Delhi and Chennai, right? So it's basically a lot of value systems and a change of them. Then previous decisions. Even previous decisions would be one of the factors of making a sexual decision. Like, a woman has already lost her virginity, for example. So she thinks, what the hell, if I've slept with a guy once, what difference does it make if I sleep with another man? Right? So your previous decision is already guiding you to take a decision a second time. Or maybe she doesn't want to have sex a second time, and her boyfriend says, you've already lost your virginity, what's the big deal? Let's have sex again. So she may, she may say, okay, fine, I mean, you have a reason over there. So we also tend to think like, even so many of us have unprotected sex, and like nothing happened the first time. Since nothing happened the first time, nothing will happen now. So you are also guided by that kind of illogic. Right? So we also base our decisions on previous decisions. Alcohol and drug use. Now this is something very, very dangerous. Alcohol and drug use. The moment you are into drugs or the moment you are into alcohol, you cannot mix alcohol and sex. That's the worst thing you can do, which most of the people like you who get AIDS or some kind of sexually transmitted diseases are the people who are mixing alcohol and sex. They get drunk and then they end up having sex. Sometimes what happens, they don't even know whether they are sleeping with the right person or not. Sometimes they don't realize, or they don't even have that kind of awareness to talk about their personal sexual history. It's like dangerous sex. You don't even realize what you are doing. You cannot make a proper decision. People don't wear contraceptives or don't wear condoms when they have sex. So these kind of things are happening. So alcohol and drug use is one of the areas which will influence your sexual decision. Then we have peer and partner pressure. Now earlier we used to think that it was only in schools. It was only in schools and during our teenage years that, we could be forced to have sex. But now you have factors like, you go out to work. Your workplace, you are surrounded by so many men and women all the time. So sometimes even your colleagues, they pressure you into having sex. Or you are working in so close proximity with a woman that you get sexually attracted to the woman. She's also fine with it and the man is also fine with it. Earlier we would have situations like, a man trying to kind of seduce a woman to bed. But now that's not the situation anymore. Women are also equally interested in having sex. So it's not that the man is fooling the woman and like kind of fooling her into having sex with him. That's not the case now. It's a very open kind of thing now, where very lots of consensual sex is happening. So peers and partner pressure will always be one of the factors guiding you towards making a sexual decision. Family factors. Now earlier, as I said, the family played a very big role, because what used to happen was the husband, wife, the children and the grandparents, and mobility was very, very less. The man used to go out and earn, bring back the bread and serve it to the family. The wife used to be at home. She used to cook for the whole day and look after the family. So there was not this intermixing so much. Now ever since women have started working in big companies and things like that, there's so much of mixing. So family values are practically submerged and new set of values are taking place, and that seems to be having more effect on them than any kind of a family value. Then we have something known as locus of control. We have two kinds of locus of control, where I would have something known as an external locus of control, where I think people are actually fooling me or attracting me to have sex. That is external locus of control. Or I may think, no, I'm good enough to make my own decisions. So if I have an internal locus of control, I'll be very good at handling a bad sexual situation. But I have an external locus of control, I would think that no, it's basically somebody else who's seducing me and I'm giving into it. Fine. So these are basically, let's sum up the whole thing once again, that there are so many factors which are at play when we are making a sexual decision. One would be emotional influences, then cultural constraints, previous decisions, alcohol and drug use, peer and partner pressure, family factors and locus of control. So there are 7 factors working simultaneously in different degrees, different intensities, depending upon the kind of persons you are with. So now you can imagine how difficult it is for us to make a sexual decision. It's like, emotional influences are working. Culturally, you are thinking what to do, what not to do. You're thinking about your previous decisions. You've taken alcohol. Your partner is pressuring you. You have family values. And finally, locus of control. So all of them are... Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'll tell you a situation. Yes. For example, let's take a teenage girl. Okay, a teenage girl, probably, no guy is paying attention to her, and she thinks that, she's no good, she's not beautiful. So what happens? She thinks that, if I don't give in to sex, no guy is going to ask me out, or probably, she doesn't have any value as a girl. So she is thinking that if I please somebody else, she will get attention in return. So that is an external locus of control. She's allowing somebody else to control her life. But if she has an internal locus of control, she will say, let me develop my self-esteem and then I don't need to have sex with the boys. Right? So that is internal locus of control. You're taking charge of your own life.
Internal is, of course,
This will also be governed by cultural constraints.
Yeah, but as I said that, basically now India is going through a lot of transition. We have these multinational companies coming in. If you look at the culture of call center and things like that, it's like, they run the call center entirely on the lines of American culture. You have like parties on Saturdays and Sundays where, men and women drink. And if you just happen to pass by a call center, especially the international call centers, not the domestic ones, you will see so many boys and girls smoking together. Not because it's fashionable, but because the workload is so high. Every night you have to stay awake. So you can imagine your condition. They have to stay awake. They have to concentrate. So they smoke. The ideal thing is that they should be doing things like yoga and meditation. But who will explain it to them? The easy way out is to take a fag. Right? So you see so many men and women just outside the call center smoking and drinking in places like Malad and things like that. All openly. Like, of course they have a different area, but if you just walk by the lane, you will see so many girls smoking. So that's become very common now. Or even like taking alcohol in parties. Like they think it's very cool. It doesn't cause any harm. Where everybody is doing, and if you are not doing, you probably might be considered very stupid or very dull or very idiot. So they also start smoking and drinking without realizing the repercussions of on their health. Right? More than it, in earlier times it used to like, if you drink alcohol you get a bad name, or if a girl smokes or drinks you get a bad name. Now that's not the situation. Now it's like you look very smart if you smoke and drink. That's the current thinking. And like if you're not doing alcohol and drugs, you are somehow very uncool. That is how people think, which is of course a wrong way of looking at things. So did you get locus of control now? Okay. So now we go on to the second segment, which is like, the skills you need to make good decision making. We saw the factors required for decision making. Now we look at the kind of skills which we require for decision making, good sexual decision making. First is information gathering. Right? Now let's take the case of if you read in the newspaper, the column by Dr. Mahendra Vatsa. So many times you read 17, 18-year-old men and women having sex. Now if they join a library like this, which has a good enough section on books, at least a girl before having sex, even if she picks up some basic book on human sexuality, she would know the after effects of pregnancy in a country like ours, or what could affect her health, or how things would affect her future. So the first skill which she would need would be information gathering. So she could go to a library, she could go to a net and first see that if she has premarital sex at such a young age, what are the repercussions or the side effects of that. So that will help her to make a proper decision, which practically, I'm practicing from past 5 years. I have not met a single patient who has told me that who has actually formally read a book on sex. Not a single one. It's basically the fragmented knowledge through the internet or through friends. But no, not a single patient of you, even if they're engineers and PhDs and anything, no, but they have not had a proper basic sex education. Neither have they cared to probably read a book on sex. What is the reason? I do not know. The second skill which you would need is...
Do you recommend any book?
Sorry?
Do you recommend any book?
Yes. No, there is one book in the library written by me. So I actually give them as a part of the treatment. Like when they have a sexual problem, that book is a part of the treatment. They have to actually make sure that the basic knowledge is correct. Basic knowledge has to be absolutely correct to avoid sexual myths and its development. That's the reason why I recommend it.
Other than sex education through the books, internet and workshop also.
Yes. We don't have actually very many proper workshops over here. They are I had attended one long time back. That was okay, not very good. But people basically, I'll tell you something, what the kind of workshops which we do over here and the kind of information men and women are looking at is very different. They don't want a man and a woman's anatomy and physiology. They don't want that. They basically are focused on sexual behavior, which we don't actually cover in workshops. Things like, what kind of sexual behavior can lead to what. And so many people, as I said, are more concerned about the behavior. They are not interested in anatomy and physiology. So even the workshops are not good at it. But if you go to places like States and Europe, their sexuality workshops are actually very, very practical. They will look into the consideration that, men and women are having these problems, let us tackle those things. It's very different over there. Over here, we still are to reach that stage. The second skill which we need would be assertiveness. Now, assertiveness is something very, very important. Like, I'll give you a small example. I do not like the way you talk to me. I understand why you are talking to me that way, but I would appreciate if you talk to me in a certain way. That is assertive behavior. You are saying about what you feel. You are also saying to the other person why you may be doing like that, but then I expect to be treated in a certain way. And then probably you can also add something, if you do not treat me in a certain way, I will take the following action. So when you take an assertive stance, what you are saying, you are like using your own right. You are also not trampling on the right of others, but at the same time you're not harming yourself. So this is an assertive skill which we don't use. It's not taught in any school or college. So, and we lack these skills. Like once when we go through the entire list, there are probably very, very few skills which we have. So how will we make a proper sexual decision? The third is ability to resist social pressure. I'll tell you something. This is something so confidential, but I just came to know through somebody who shared it with me. Uh, there are places like in Mumbai or places in other states also where so much of wife swapping is going on, which we think is a very foreign concept. But exchange of partners is so rampant and so many people are into it. People are changing their names, and then you have social media which is helping you to get in touch with partners with no guilt and no kind of remorse or guilt. Everybody is doing it with their consent. So this is actually a complete shift in our sexual values, where earlier we used to think, oh my god, extramarital sex and extramarital affair is something so dangerous. But then so many people are doing it with so much of consent. A group of men and women are doing it, and nobody is a guilty, nobody is a victim, and nobody is a perpetrator. So that entire thing is it's a very new thing, and people are giving into social pressure. Like there would be maybe 2 or 3 couples who are into wife swapping, and they may think it's real fun, there's no harm. So a few other couples may join. So these things are happening. It may not be so open and obvious, but then these are happening very much in our country also, and not only in a big city like Mumbai, but also in smaller cities. But it's a very hidden thing, so they don't talk about it. So we should have the ability to resist social pressure. To give you a small example, one of my, let's say, life values is to maintain my health. So no matter whoever pressures me into having alcohol and drugs, I'll never do it, irrespective of who tells me, right? In spite of any kind of social pressure, this is a value system which I follow right from the time I was 21. But then each of us will need to have that kind of ability and willpower to resist things. Like nobody can force me to drink and smoke. I will not do it, no matter how close the person may be to me. And so we all need to have that kind of strong willpower and not give in to these things. Then we have something known as communication and listening skills. What do you mean by communicating? For example, a man and a woman, let's say they are just out of their teens, 17 and 18 years old, and they want to experiment sex, and none of them knows about the other sexual history. So even before you jump to bed, you need to talk about sex. What is your sexual history? How many partners have you had? Have you got your blood tested? Who is responsible for the contraception, you or me? Nobody talks about these things, and there is no communication. So we need to develop that communication, no matter how unromantic it may sound. Because at the end of the day, if you catch a venereal disease, it is very embarrassing. Sometimes it's very expensive. It's infectious, right? So we think it's, like, why talk about these things? But actually these things are required, and we don't have the communication skills. We
It's
think,
very important.
yes, we need to. And see, what I personally believe is that if you can get naked with a partner, why can't you talk with a partner? Right? That is more important. When you can actually get naked with a partner, why can't you talk with your partner about it? Which in many parts of the world, this is a problem. People just have sex, but they don't talk about sex, which is again very, very important. Then you need to have negotiation and collaboration skills. Now let's take, these would be required in case of group situations, like 4 or 5 people, they have gone to a party, and one of them says, let's drink and have some fun, and the other 4, they think, okay, it's okay if he says, let's suggest, and let's all get into sex. So that kind of group thinking is very, very harmful, where people individually are not thinking. 4 or 5 people, which is known as group think in pure psychology, where 4 or 5 people are thinking and everybody is kind of doing the same thing. That is very, very dangerous, and which happens in not only in sexual situations but in very many situations. 5 people gather and decide to do something, the rest 100 will follow them. So that is one thing which you need to do. Next skill which you need is ability to learn from past experiences. Now this is very, very important. Ability to learn from past experiences. I have so many patients who who would tell me that serially they have had so much of unprotected sex. Serially, I mean, woman after woman, they have had so much of sex, and up till now they are fine. So they are thinking, up till now we've not been infected with anything, nothing is going to happen in the future. You may have been lucky at this point of time. You may have been sleeping around with women who have had clean sexual histories. But what happens after this? You cannot take such a big chance with your life. Right? Maybe, it was your good luck, or probably you slept with the right woman, but then you never know. And then you have I have so many patients who tell me, but that lady really looks very, like elegant. She looks as if she's a very sweet and a cute kind of girl who's probably not very promiscuous. So then I tell them that if she's sleeping with you, she's obviously sleeping with somebody else. Right? How can you make a judgment by looking at somebody's face? Which is a very, very erroneous thing to do. You cannot judge anybody by just looking at the person's face. We think, oh my God, she's looking so innocent. Probably, she mustn't have had too much of sex. So she's a safe bet. But it doesn't work that way. It really, really doesn't work that way. We as human beings, we have to learn from a past experience, in the sense like if a man or a woman is sexually infected, they should realize that after getting cured, they always have to have protected sex. Or if they want to abstain from sex, but if they cannot do that, they have to make sure that they learn from their past and not repeat the same mistake. Which so many people probably who are infected with AIDS are actually doing that. With HIV, that there is no sense of the past. They think anything goes and nothing is going to happen to me. Or they think like, AIDS or HIV is something which happens to others, it doesn't happen to me. And like people think that, I can get an HIV only if I go to prostitutes. But you can get HIV infected even if you sleep around with multiple sex partners. If you're sleeping with 10 women and all those 10 women are sleeping with other 10 men, you can imagine the situation. Right? So you cannot do any kind of guesswork. These days people are thinking that, it's okay. I mean, women are safer than prostitutes. But how can you say if the person has a wrong sexual history, she can be equally dangerous? So we need to understand that. Learning from the experience of others. Now what happens is, especially in a male gathering, whether you are a teenager or even if you're 40-year-old or 50-year-old, basically men generally talk a lot about, sexual conquering. Like the more a man has slept with lot number of women, he'll be praised by the other men. So there is a kind of a culture amongst men where, like if somebody says that, I slept with 4 women, somebody says I slept with 5 women, and everybody is being appreciated. He may be lying, but then that's not the point. Everybody thinks it's a game he's played, and he's really played it well. So that creates a kind of very dirty culture amongst the whole set of men, where everybody is teaching everybody wrong things. You will not find these kind of discussion in a women's group. They will probably talk more about a loving relationship and a trusting relationship rather than how many sex partners you've had. So ideally what should happen, we will not be able to learn from the experience of others, because as I said that when men are talking about sex, they are talking about boasting their sexual conquests, which doesn't teach the younger men proper values. So what has to happen is you need to probably speak to a doctor, speak to a therapist, or speak to some relative who is actually very honest about their sex life. Only then can you learn from the experience of others. Otherwise, if there is a lot of self-boasting about sexual conquests with women, you are not helping anybody in any way. Right? Okay, so again, let me sum up the skills which we need for decision making. They would be information gathering. That is one skill which we need. We need assertiveness. We need the ability to resist social pressure. We need communication and listening skills. We need negotiation and collaboration skills. We need an ability to learn from our past experiences and learn from the experience of others. Now just imagine how many of us or how many of people have these skills in the first place? Tell me.
Yeah.
Almost nil. 5% of the people may be having few of these skills. Now without these skills we are expected to make a proper sexual decision. How will that happen? Forget about the first factors which I said. Probably you are not even aware of those things. It is at a subconscious level, some of them. But even with these skills which can be learnt, how many of us actually have these skills? apart from maybe information gathering.
Can you just elaborate on the negotiation and collaboration skills?
Yes.
With regard to making.
Yes. Negotiation and collaboration skills would be something like, let's say, take the case of a girl in an Indian culture in a very typical middle conservative class family, where she's made friendship with a boy in her college and they want to get sexually intimate. So the very first decision which she has to take is whether she wants to lose her virginity at such a young age or not, right? So even before, she wants to have sex, they should make a decision as to how it will affect her future life. That is a negotiation skill. And they have to collaborate in the sense like it has to be a joint thinking. The man cannot pressure the woman, nor can the woman pressure the boy into having sex. So that is negotiating. You're negotiating for your right, which is not happening. Any of these skills people don't know, so obviously they're not putting any of these skills to use. So these things, according to me, as a maybe a thinking sexologist or whatever you may wish to call it, I would say that these skills should be taught in the school from grade 9 onwards, or even from grade 8 onwards. These skills should be a part of the curriculum, and it should not be called as sex education, but just maybe life skills. So once if they have these skills, they will be in a much better position to make decisions about their sex life. This is something very, very important. We need to look into it. You see so many cases. If any of you are reading the columns of Dr. Mahendra Vatsa, I believe he's such a progressive man that even at the age of 90, yes, he is 90, and I have met him personally, and he is a gem of a person. He's very, very nice. Very active. And recently I actually got a personal letter from him. So I'm very happy about that also. But he's really very, very nice. And I think the kind of work which he is doing, Dr. Mahendra Vatsa, from past so many years, it's really hats off to him.
He's a gynecologist, huh?
He was a gynecologist, and then like few years, about 20 years or so, he decided that he wants to venture into the field of sex education and sexual healing. So then he took over that. But he's really very nice.
Even Rajan Bhosale is also.
Yes.
And Prakash Kothari is also.
Yes. Yes, they are actually.
Hospital there.
Yes. No, Prakash Kothari doesn't practice anymore. Rajan Bhosale, he's also left now. He has his own practice. So they are into their own practice now. But they're all good. Okay. Now having this background, now we are in a position to make decision making skills. Like how is the process of making a sexual decision? We are going into that now. The first step, we'll look at a particular example and then we will see how we can make a sexual decision. Identify and explore alternative courses of action. That is the first step. When we make a sexual decision, identify and explore alternate courses of action. I won't get up right now, just let me finish doing this. Then I'll go over there and we'll see how we can actually come to a proper decision. So the first step is identifying and exploring alternate courses of action. For example, let's say I want to, I've gone to, let's say a unique kind of bar. Normally only stiff drinks are served in bars, but maybe I've gone to a very nice bar where they also have jasmine tea, they also have red wine, and they also have different kinds of alcohol. So I may go to that bar and decide that okay, I don't want to have alcohol, let me have some red wine with distilled water, which is less harmful and which will keep me sane. So that is identifying and exploring alternative courses of action. There are 10 things available, but I want to take one of them. That is, the second step is seeking information that makes the short-term and long-term consequences clear for each choice. Now let's take the same example. I am well read, maybe I have visited this library and I have read about alcohol, I have read about red wine. So next time when I go to a bar, I will take the decision of consuming red wine rather than alcohol. And what will be the short term of red wine? If I consume red wine, short term will not be that bad. Even long term consequences are not that bad. But when I look at alcohol, the long term and the short term consequences both can be really very harmful. If I consume more than maybe 2 drinks, I may just black out or anything may happen to me. And long term, that it practically destroys your entire body. So that's the second thing. The third step is weighing the positive and negative consequences for each alternative. Now I'm looking at red wine. What are the positive consequences? It does not cause me so much of harm as alcohol. That is the positive consequences. Negative consequences, even wine contains a little bit of alcohol, so I do not want to get addicted to it. So for each alternate which you have chosen, you have to see the positive and the negative consequences. Again, selecting an alternate that has maximum positive consequences and minimum negative consequences. Now if I am selecting red wine, it will, let's say, have 2 or 3 benefits. Probably it's good for the heart, or it's good for the body, and so I have selected that. Minimum negative consequences, maybe in the long run it may become addictive. But if I have selected alcohol, then what are the positive consequences? Nothing. According to me, alcohol has no positive effects. It's a myth that it has a lot of good effects. I would never ever recommend alcohol to anybody under the sun. And no positive consequences, but so many negative consequences. You may drink and get into a fight. You may drink and get into a blackout. You may get into a coma if you have consumed beyond your limits. So anything can happen. You may even puke if you are not used to alcohol. Fine. And finally, implementing one's decision. I have thought about all these things and I decided, okay, red wine is right for me. Or even if there's something called jasmine tea, I would even drop red wine and have jasmine tea if I'm in a company of a woman. So probably I would have jasmine tea, which will have no side effects at all, which is a very good drink according to aromatherapists. So I would rather have a jasmine tea. And maybe if I, with my male friends, I would rather have beer rather than alcohol, which is slightly less harmful. Fine. Now, looking at these steps, let us see what we can. I'm going to ask you a question, and you tell me how we can work that out. I'm going to say a situation. The situation is that there is a man who's single. Okay, there's a man who's single. He is about 45 years old, and he is working in a company where he is sexually attracted to a particular client of his. She's a lady, and she has her husband lives in Dubai. And now this man and this woman are having sex regularly. And they are coming to you for advice. What should we do? Are we doing the right thing? What kind of precaution should we take? Now, what kind of advice will you give to them? Identifying and exploring alternate courses of action. What will you advise them? Tell me. Any of you. In this particular situation. It's a real life example.
If he doesn't get caught, fine.
No, the first step. The person
is not married.
The person is not married. The woman is married. Her husband lives in Dubai.
Protective sex.
No, the first, I want you to make a decision stepwise. Don't give me a final answer. Since we've learned the steps, we need to move logically and come to a conclusion. So the first is identifying and exploring alternate courses of action. What are the different things they can do? This particular man and this particular woman, what options do they have? First tell me that.
We could take her to a restaurant first thing.
Be close friends.
Okay, you mean emotionally close and not sexually close. Okay. What are the options they have? Tell me.
I mean, you've got to be on site to know what you have to do.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, suppose you were to guide this couple. Suppose this particular lady and this man comes to you and says,
both they will come.
yes, both have come to you. And they want to make a proper decision.
And tell them to be very careful.
No. See, he said the right thing, that what are the options open? One of them that they can be, see, I'll explain to you what are the options open. One thing is that they can just be friends. Second thing is that they can be emotional friends. You know, like sharing secrets and things like that. Another option with them is that they are in a friendship, or they're sexual partners. Or even what they can do is, if they really don't want to get intimate, probably they can masturbate each other, right, without actually getting physical. Or probably they can have something known as phone sex. He may be very excited, she may be very excited, and they can have something known as phone sex. Or probably they can even have sex over Skype, where physically they are not even touching each other, but it's all a kind of online sex. So now look at the number of options they have, right? See how many options I explored. So those are the options they have. Now let's go to the second step.
Tell me one thing. Sir, emotional. How many cases from emotional go into the sex?
All of them. All of them. See, because what happens these days, people are first getting into the physical act of sex and then they are developing an attachment. It's going the other way around now. People are jumping into bed and then if they think there is sexual compatibility, then they start loving each other. Which earlier would be like, it would be like love, marriage and sex. Now it's basically sex, love and then marriage, or no marriage at all. So that is a cycle which is being followed now. So let's see the second step. Seeking information that makes the short term and long term consequences clear for each choice. Now let's see what would be the short term and long term effect. Let's take the short term effect of one or two choices. Let's say physically in each other's presence they are masturbating themselves or are masturbating each other. Let's say, what will be the short term effect? There will be no short term effect. Will there be any long term effect? Long term effect, not necessarily physical harm, but maybe some kind of an emotional harm, provided, as this gentleman said, if they are getting caught, then the relationship may be in jeopardy. The husband may come to know that the wife is sexually active with another man, right? So they have to think about all the possible consequences, the short term and the long term consequences of each of these things which we discussed, right? Let's say they're just having phone sex where they are not even meeting each other. I had a patient who was seduced from a woman who had come from Dubai and they used to have phone sex. The lady said, I don't want to meet you personally because I have neighbors around. So they would talk dirty and she would masturbate on the phone and she was fine. She said, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to meet you. I don't want to know your name. It's just that my husband is not around. And she would use a vibrator while having phone sex. In our own country, not in any foreign country, right? So even that is an option. That is at least less harmful than personally meeting somebody. Would you all agree with that? So we have so many options. We don't even think. We think the only option is to just jump to bed. But we have so many options which we can explore, just slightly less harmful than actually having penetrative sex. Okay, so that's the second step. We just took one example. Weighing the positive and negative consequences for each alternative. Now let's see positive and negative. Let's see, let's say they are having phone sex, suppose. What will be the positive and negative consequences of having phone sex? Maybe their phone bills will rise very much. If you're talking for, let's say, half an hour, and you look at the amount of money you'll spend on phone sex. Or sometimes what could be another negative consequence? If there's a cross connection, somebody comes to know about this, it's going to be very embarrassing, right? What if the phone is tapped? What if the husband thinks that the wife is being mischievous and he's hired a detective to tap her phone? She may get caught. Now that's a negative consequences. Now let's see what could be the positive consequences. Positive consequences would be they will never catch any kind of venereal disease because they are not actually having penetrative sex. Fine? Or even the... Sorry?
Mentally satisfied.
Yes. And living in a city like Mumbai, everybody will not have the kind of freedom to be living in such a sophisticated place that they don't care about the neighborhood. If you are living in a middle class locality, I am very sure that you will have the social fear that some stranger is walking into your house. You cannot actually do that in certain societies. If you are living in a very well-off place, then that's very common and nobody cares. But then, so again, one of the positive consequences would be that no, you are not exchanging any venereal disease with each other. You are not meeting physically, so that is also a safeguard. So you looked at the positive and negative consequences. Now the next step, selecting an alternate that has maximum positive consequences and minimum negative consequences. Now let us look at all the choices this man and woman had in the beginning. They could just have emotionally they could be very attached to each other, like share their sexual secrets and things like that. So maybe emotional attachment. Secondly, they had the option of having PS, that is phone sex. Third, they had the option of having Skype sex. They also had the option of having mutual masturbation. Mutual masturbation either in person or they could even no, you cannot have it online. So mutual masturbation has to be personal. Or these are the options they had. And then probably actually having sex, full penetrative sex. Now out of these, you tell me, which one should they go for? If you are a counselor or a sex therapist or even a psychotherapist, what would you advise them? Keeping in mind that the man is a single man, he wants to have sex, he has a normal sexual desire, the woman's wife is away, the woman's husband is away, and she too has her own, periods of sexual desire. So how would they do it? Or we even have one more option where, the man or the woman can simply masturbate.
Well, he can have the sex to all, when he's got a choice.
So he has these choices. Now what would you advise them? Tell me.
He can have sex.
Okay.
Phone.
Okay, you have advised them to have full sex.
Why not?
Okay, fine, that is his advice. Now whether they want to follow or not follow, that is that.
He's
Right?
got a chance, let him do it.
No, but the thing is that you cannot force your choice on them. You have to give them the options and then let them decide. Fine.
They've come to this stage, why not go to the end?
Okay, so you...
Select it.
But we have to tell them that these things are available. Now you tell me, out of these things, which has the most positive consequences and minimum negative consequences? You tell me.
Phone sex.
Skype.
Okay, Skype, what about you? We need to think, don't just say that that's the only answer. We have so many options and we need to think.
I will go for the other sex.
Because that is the most satisfying form of sex. But then you have to also look at one thing, that there is something known as responsible behavior also. What if they get caught? Have you thought about that? What if they get caught?
I would see to it that one doesn't get.
Yes, I know that. But what if you get caught? Do you know the consequences? Are you prepared for those consequences? Most of the time men and women are not, because how much will you plan, right? I'm not saying that you should stop them from having sex, but give them all the possibilities and let them decide that even these has consequences. See, everything will have consequences in lesser or major degrees. Fine, but there are also options which you can use. For example, even the woman can buy a vibrator and she can satisfy herself. If the husband is away for, let's say, a week or 10 days, why does she have to get into an affair or extramarital sex if she can use a vibrator?
Does he get the same satisfaction?
Yes. And actually,
This way the receptivity of a solution will also differs between
yes,
male and female.
yes.
Male may want something else. female may
Yes,
want something
but
else.
then they have to come to, as I said, they have to come to some kind of conclusion which is mutually satisfactory. See, sometimes even a man and a woman, when they have sex, they are still not satisfied. Would you agree with that?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even husband and wives are not satisfied with sex on a regular basis. So you cannot say that by simply having penetrative sex, that's the most satisfying way of having sex. No, it may not be the case all the time, right? Maybe most of the time, but not all of the time. So, and we come to the last step. First, you are selecting something which has most of the positive consequences and the least negative consequences. And finally, you are implementing your decision, because they are both sexually charged and they want to release their sexual tension. So they would need to follow one of them. Now you leave the choice on them. You cannot tell them that go for this or go for this. Let them decide what suits them. And at the same time, they have also worked out all the consequences which they have to face. So now what you're doing, you're making an informed choice. Now leave it to them, whether they want to go all the way or they want to try any of these options. So in a similar way, whenever any of us are faced with any sexual decision, we should all go through these steps, which we don't do. There is a case which I'll tell you, where there is this gym instructor who's married. His wife lives in Chennai, like she's supposed to join him, and now he is like having sex with one of the co-instructors. And now he tells me, like, what do I do? My wife is going to come back. Can I manage both the women at the same time? I said, that is a decision which you have to take, because he's not sexually satisfied with the wife. The wife is very conservative. So he says, can I continue having sex with a colleague of mine? I can manage both of them. I said, if you can manage it, if you think you're a responsible man, that is your choice. But you cannot hide these things for a lot of time. Do you all agree with that? It's really difficult. How many things will you hide and from whom will you hide? You can have 2 cell phones. Probably you'll take her to a hotel, or probably when your wife is away, you'll bring her. But somewhere along the line, some kind of indication that, there is some kind of extra sexuality will come to the forefront. If you can handle it, if the wife is fine with it, why should anybody else have a problem with it? Society should not have a problem, but the individual should be more careful. And I would personally believe that you can have a lot of sexual partners, but you need to do it with 2 things. You need to show respect to your partner, and you need to be responsible towards your partner. If we are not doing those 2 things, you have no business to sleep around. You really have no business to sleep around if you cannot put these 2 factors in your sexual interaction: respect and responsibility. Like, you're just treating somebody like an object, that is really not done, right? And secondly, like, if you're not responsible, like you're just having sex with a girl and you're making her pregnant and then you're just going away, that is just not justified. There are people who do that, which is very wrong, because you may put her in so much of trouble, right? So that is how, in this way, we can, anybody, right from somebody who's into early adulthood, right from any time, if you're sexually active, this is the steps you need to follow, and then do something. Trust me, if you go through this process, your life will become much more simpler, and you will actually have a lot of control over the things which you do. If you just like, okay, I want to have sex, and then you unzip and you get into bed, that's a very wrong way of handling your own life. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's not the right way to deal with things. You have to be prepared. Like, today, if somebody decides that I want to have sex, go through all these things, have a discussion with your partner, and then probably take a step. Even if you have sex 2 days later, it doesn't really make a difference, right? It's not something that you're going to die if you don't have sex today. So, any questions from your side?
You made a mention